Welcome to Beyond the Backroads, the podcast where forgotten towns, haunted highways, and small town legends refuse to stay buried. Out here, the shadows move a little differently. Every backroad has a secret. Every quiet place has a story it wants to tell. We take you past the city limits, into the places where history, mystery, and the unexplained blur together. Some of what you'll hear is strange, some is unsettling, and some, well, might just keep you up at night. So buckle up, we're heading beyond the backroads.
Welcome to Beyond the Backroads.
Welcome to episode 1 of Beyond the Backroads. Before we take you into the legend of Elsewhere, Kentucky, we need to start with the part most people don't know. The part hidden in old newspapers, microfilm, and dusty county records. Elsewhere was real. Not a myth, not a story, a real town that somehow slipped out of history.
Yeah, and here's the strange part. There are almost no official records. No map markers, no highway signs, no county plaques, nothing. It's like the place lived, and then something hit delete.
What we do know comes from a handful of references found by a college researcher digging through microfilm back in the early 2000s. She was looking into old Kentucky settlements and came across a tiny mention in an April 2nd, 1953 issue of the Callaway County Gazette. A tiny note, barely a paragraph. It said the county intended to, quote, discontinue maintenance and public access to a place called Elsewhere due to, quote, structural concerns and community relocation. That's all. One sentence announcing the end of an entire town.
Imagine living in a place so small, so forgotten, that the announcement of its literal disappearance only takes one sentence.
Elsewhere was located just off what used to be Highway 280 outside New Concord, Kentucky. Rumor has it that the road leading into town didn't just fall apart, it was deliberately disconnected by the county sometime between 1953 and 1956. Residents quietly moved away, houses were emptied, buildings were shuttered, and then people stopped talking about it. The whole place faded.
So let's talk about what this town actually looked like. Because even though it was a small town, the descriptions we do have, they're chilling in their simplicity. Picture this. A general store with a single front porch light, barely lit the gravel. A two-room schoolhouse sitting just down the hill. A narrow gravel road looping off the main highway, but disappearing into trees. A handful of homes, most of them unpainted, sitting quietly behind overgrown fences. A church with a bell that locals swore rang even when there wasn't a service. The real place, but barely alive, even in its prime.
The general store is the one building we've heard the most about. According to the researchers' notes, and one single eyewitness account recorded in the early 70s, the store had a wooden porch, a hand-painted sign, and shelves lined with items that looked untouched for years. We're talking flour sacks, canned peaches, dusty bottles of soda, old toys, and a manual cash register that still had coins inside. Coins. Sitting there, like the last customer never actually finished checking out.
And the schoolhouse, man, that's where things start to get strange. Multiple accounts from different decades describe it the same way. 2 rooms, 1 small bell tower, desks still inside, a chalkboard with writing that looked like it had been erased, but not erased enough. and outside. The swing set, just two chairs hanging, no seats. People say they've seen the chairs moving even when there is no wind.
By the early 1950s, the town's population had dropped to around 20 to 30 people, most of them older, a few families with children in the schoolhouse. But here's where the historical trail shifts from small town into something's wrong. Because buried deeper in that 1953 microfilm was a second note. This one handwritten next to the article. It said, "Elsewhere, public closure recommended after incident." No description, no follow-up articles, no details, just after incident, and then silence.
That's the part that hooked both of us. Towns shrink all the time. People move. Buildings rot. But towns don't just disappear because of an incident. Buried in someone's handwritten margin, and counties don't cut off roads unless they really don't want you to go there.
So how do you lose a town? You remove its road. You let the buildings fall. You don't teach the next generation the name. And eventually, people forget. Except a few locals in Callaway County that didn't forget. They whispered, they warned, they told their kids, don't go down that road. Stay out of the woods behind the lake. There used to be a schoolhouse there, but we don't talk about it.
And that leads us to the story. The eyewitnesses' accounts, the strange encounters that people swear happened long after the town had emptied out. Starting with the boy, his father, and the scream inside the schoolhouse. But we'll get to that.
This is the history of Elsewhere, or what's left of it. A vanished Kentucky town with missing records, a disconnected road, and an incident no one ever explained. Up next, the stories the locals would talk about, the scream, the disappearance, and what people still swear they've seen. Now that we've laid out the history, the disappearance, the missing records, the road that leads nowhere, it's time for the part people still talk about. Not publicly, not loudly, but quietly, usually at night. The stories, and every version of this legend starts the same way, with a boy, his father, and a scream that no one could explain.
This account comes from a man who said he was around 12 or 13 years old when it happened, sometime in the late 1940s before Elsewhere was erased. He and his father had driven in from a nearby farm to pick up supplies at the general store. Just a normal stop. Something they'd done dozens of times before. Nothing felt strange at first.
The boy remembered the porch boards creaking under their feet. He remembered the bell above the door jingling when they went inside. He said the store smelled like dust, wood, and something sour he couldn't place. The shelves were stocked, but nothing looked like new. Everything felt old, even then. While his father talked with the shopkeeper, the boy stepped back outside to wait.
That's when he noticed the schoolhouse. It sat just across the gravel road, partially hidden by trees. The door wasn't fully closed. He said it looked like the building was watching him, like the dark inside was deeper than it should have been.
A few minutes later, a friend from a nearby farm rode up on his bike. They'd explored the schoolhouse before, just kids being curious. The friend dared him to go inside again. The boy hesitated, but stayed behind near the porch while his friend crossed the road alone. He watched him step through the schoolhouse door, and then
The boy froze. He said the scream didn't echo. It didn't fade. It just stopped, like someone turned it off.
his father ran out of the store. The shopkeeper followed, pale, shaken, already backing away from the doorway. All three of them rushed toward the schoolhouse, calling the boy's name. No answer.
Inside the building, everything was wrong. The air was cold, still. No desk lay tipped over in the middle of the room. No broken windows, no footprints in the dust, no sign of anyone leaving, and on the chalkboard, written uneven letters, were 3 words: "Don't come back."
The father searched the building, the woods behind it, the creek nearby. The boy was never found. No missing person report, no newspaper article, no official record that a child vanished at all. Just silence.
And here's where the story stops being a one-off legend. Because decades later, in the 1970s again, and in the 1980s, other people reported the exact same different witnessings. Different years, same sequence.
Teenagers exploring the area before the buildings collapsed said they heard something screaming inside the schoolhouse, even when they were standing outside. Some claimed the temperature dropped the moment they crossed the threshold. Others said the chalkboard had writing on it that hadn't been there seconds before. Warnings, names, words that didn't belong to them.
A retired deputy later told the local historian that he once followed boot prints into the schoolhouse after responding to a trespassing call. The prints led through the first room and into the second, and then stopped, mid-step. No exit tracks, no open windows, nothing.
And it wasn't just the schoolhouse. People reported footsteps on the porch of the general store. Slow, deliberate pacing late at night. Some heard the church bell ring even after the rope had been cut. Others claimed they heard children laughing in the woods behind the schoolhouse, but no children were ever seen nearby.
One of the most unsettling accounts came from the older man named Earl, a lifelong Callaway County resident. He said he drove through elsewhere in the early 1960s, after most people had already left, but before the buildings were torn down. He described the town as too quiet. No birds, no insects, no dogs, just silence.
As he passed the schoolhouse, Earl swore he saw a little girl sitting at a desk inside. She was perfectly still. He blinked, she was gone.
Another visitor reported hearing a woman's voice, sharp, angry, yelling, "Sit down!" from inside the schoolhouse long after it had been abandoned. When he went inside to check, there were no desks left, just dust. He said he felt something brush past him, small, fast, like a child running. He didn't go back.
And every version of this story, every witness, every decade, circles back to the same thing: the schoolhouse. Locals believe whatever happened there is why the county disconnected the road. Not decay, not money, the schoolhouse.
And as for the boy who disappeared that day, no body, no grave, no record, just a scream and a building that people still refuse to enter.
Which brings us to the present, because even though elsewhere is gone, even though the town itself no longer exists, people still claim something remains, something that never left.
The problem is the road doesn't exist anymore. The county erased it, turned it into dirt, then into overgrowth, then into nothing. What used to be a clear path is now trees and brush. But people say the land still remembers where the town was. They talk about places in the woods where the air feels empty, where the sound drops out suddenly, where animals won't go.
One hunter from Callaway County told a story that still circulates locally. This was in the mid-1990s. He was tracking a deer early one morning when the woods went completely quiet. No birds, no wind, no movement at all. He followed the trail for another 50 yards and came across what looked like an old stone fountain. Just a rectangle of rock, half swallowed by vines. He crouched down to look closer.
That's when he heard footsteps behind him, fast, light, crunching leaves like kids running. He spun around, nothing there, but the footsteps didn't stop until the steps went away from the fountain, or or foundation. He left the woods early that day and never hunted that area again.
Another account came from a couple walking the area near where the old road used to connect. They found a narrow, sunken path, worn down like something heavy had traveled it over and over again. A road without a road. As they followed it, the woman stopped and asked, "Do you hear that?"
Her husband didn't hear anything at first. Then she looked a few more times. Stop. Then she took a few more steps and froze. She said she could hear a bell, soft at first, then louder, a school bell. There hasn't been a bell there in decades. They turned around immediately and left the woods. Neither of them ever went back.
And then there's the researcher, the same one who discovered the microfilm references to elsewhere in the first place. In 2001, she decided to visit the area herself. She said the woods felt different the moment she stepped out of her car, like the air had weight to it, like something there knew why she'd come.
She located what she believed to be the remains of the general store. Rotted porch boards, old nails, splintered wood, still showing traces of faded paint. She set her camera down and began to take notes. When she checked the photos later, every single one was blurred. Every single one, except the last photo.
That photo showed a dark shape standing in a doorway that didn't exist anymore. No building, no walls, just a shadow shaped like a person.
People who visited the area more recently say they've experienced things that are harder to describe: sudden drops in temperature, the feel of being watched, the sense that something is standing just behind them, close enough to feel, but never to see. Some say they hear whispers, too quiet to make out words. Others hear crying.
And the strangest part, most of these people had never heard the story of elsewhere before going out there. They didn't know about the schoolhouse. They didn't know about the boy. They didn't know about the incident. They just knew something felt wrong.
Which raises questions. What happens when the town doesn't just die, but it is erased? When the records vanish, when the roads disappear, when no one teaches the next generation the name, does the land let go? Or does it hold on to what happens there?
Elsewhere might be gone, but the imprint of what happened there isn't. It lingers in the woods, in the foundations, in the stories passed quietly between locals who still won't walk that area alone. This wasn't just a ghost town. It was a town that lost something and never got it back.
Maybe it's memories, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's just the echoes of lives interrupted too suddenly. But people who've been there say the same thing. You don't feel like you're visiting an abandoned place. You feel like you're intruding.
So, what remains of Elsewhere, Kentucky today? No buildings, no roads, no signs, just overgrown land and stories that refuse to stay buried. Whatever happened there, whatever the incident was, left a mark. And that mark is still there, waiting.
So if you ever find yourself driving outside New Concord and you see a patch of woods that feels too quiet, keep driving. Some places disappear for a reason. That's where the road ends in Elsewhere, Kentucky. No signs, no buildings, no way back in, just stories, and the feeling that something there never moved on.
If tonight's story followed you, if you caught yourself listening a little closer or glancing behind you, that's okay. These are the kinds of places that stay with you, because some towns don't just disappear, they leave something behind.
And there are more places like this out there, more back roads, more forgotten towns. More stories that never made it into the history books, but were never forgotten by the people who lived through them.
If you have a story like this, something that happened on a road you still won't drive, a place your family warned you about, or an encounter you've never really talked about, we want to hear it.
You can find us right here on YouTube at Beyond the Backroads podcast. That's where every episode lives.
We're also on Instagram at Beyond the Backroads podcast, where we share clips, updates, and the stories that don't always make it into a full episode. And if you want to tell your story privately, you can email us anytime at beyondthebackroadspodcast@gmail.com.
No pressure, no judgment, just stories.
Whether it's something you've experienced yourself or something passed down to you in whispers, if it's been waiting to be told, we're listening.
Until next time,
Don't travel those back roads alone. There are more roads out there, more stories waiting just off the map. And we'll keep following them, one place, one legend, one back road at a time. You can find Beyond the Backroads on YouTube and Instagram at Beyond the Backroads podcast. And if there's a story you think we should hear, email us anytime at beyondthebackroadspodcast@gmail.com. We follow the backroads so you don't have to.
We will see you next time.